The United States has slowed the spread of coronavirus, but there's one scourge whose virality is only increasing: fake news. We will examine the most egregious examples of how the left-wing media lies to add panic to the pandemic. Then, in an effort to combat COVID, a Democratic mayor politely asks criminals to chill, and a New York jail releases a bunch of child molesters. Meanwhile, prosperity preachers command the virus to go away, and President Trump rains fire and brimstone down on Jim Acosta during his latest ratings-busting press briefing. All that and so much more. I'm Michael Knowles, and this is The Michael Knowles Show. We caught them in the act. We caught those fake news media spreading more fake news about the coronavirus. This is the worst fake news that I have seen on network television in, I guess, about 6 months. But, listen, that's a lot because there's a whole lot of fake news going through. CBS News is trying to whip people up into a frenzy and hysteria about coronavirus generally and specifically the situation in New York. So they decided to air footage showing the madness of a hospital in New York. Now, coronavirus, serious problem in New York. It's much more serious there than, I guess, anywhere else in the United States. So why do the TV networks, why do the mainstream news media feel the need to lie to make it seem even worse than it is? CBS News aired footage of an overcrowded hospital room in New York City that actually wasn't in New York City. It actually wasn't in the United States. It actually wasn't in the Western Hemisphere. It was in Italy. It was an editing mistake, they say. They took immediate steps to remove it from all platforms and shows. Here is the footage side by side. You will hear the report from British news talking about this hospital room in Italy. And if you can see it, you'll be able to see that it is almost shot for shot the same room that they're pretending is in New York.
This is the main hospital in Bergamo in Lombardy province. It's one of the most advanced hospitals in Europe.
There it is. You can see it's the exact same room, and they're pretending that this is in New York. This is not the first time we've seen this. Do you remember, I think it was about 6 months ago, when ABC News made a similar mistake by airing footage that they said was the situation in Syria with Turkish gunfire raining down on the poor Kurds, and this was all Trump's fault and he betrayed our allies, and it just looked like a scene out of an apocalyptic movie. And then it turned out actually it wasn't in Syria, actually it wasn't in the Middle East, actually it wasn't this year, it was from a Kentucky gun show in 2017.
You're right here appearing to show Turkey's military bombing Kurd civilians in a Syrian border town.
This video, obtained by ABC News, appears to show the fury of the Turkish attack on the border town of Tal Abyad 2 nights ago.
And it appears to show the attack on the border town because we've decided to overlay this voiceover. Actually, though, it's from a Kentucky gun show, and if we told you it was a Kentucky gun show, you would have believed that too. You'll believe whatever we tell you. We're the news media. Outrageous stuff. Obviously, this is why people no longer really believe the mainstream media, but they continue to do it. Why do they continue to do it? Because nobody sees the correction. Nobody saw. Nobody, unless you are watching this show, listening to this show, reading some conservative news outlets, you would not know that CBS News actually was airing footage of crowded hospital rooms in Italy, which is much worse off than the United States. You would not know that. Unless you are watching or listening to conservative media, you would have no idea that that footage that was supposed to be from battlefields, Turkey rolling the tanks in, was actually from a Kentucky gun show. Because what happened? In the case of the Kentucky gun show, ABC News admits on Twitter that, this was wrong. They issue a correction. But the original news story gets orders of magnitude more retweets and likes than the correction. The original news story gets seen on the biggest TV shows on ABC. The correction gets seen as post number 25 of the day on Twitter. Nobody sees the correction. This is how they get away with it. It's how the newspapers have gotten away with it for years. You know, they run the fake story on page A1, and then they run the correction in tiny print on page Z75. So that's the mainstream media. This is also true on social media. We don't want to let Twitter get off the hook here either. Laura Ingraham, a little while ago, sent out a tweet when it looked like we had this promising new drug to treat coronavirus, hydroxychloroquine. Laura Ingraham tweets out, Lenox Hill in New York, among many hospitals, already using hydroxychloroquine with very promising results. One patient was described as Lazarus, who was seriously ill from COVID-19, already released. What did Twitter do? Twitter suspended her account for that. You're not allowed to say that there's light at the end of the tunnel. You're not allowed to say that there might be some hope among this pandemic. Damn it, the media's trying to whip up a panic. And Laura Ingraham's getting in their way by suggesting that we might have a decent medical treatment for it. So they suspend her account. They tell her that she's got to delete the tweet if she wants to get her account back. They said it was, quote, misleading information around COVID-19. And then guess what happened yesterday? The FDA approved the drug to treat coronavirus. Guess it wasn't fake news after all. Doesn't matter. The tweet's gone. The story's out there. Fake news. Laura Ingraham's got to delete her tweet. Now, you know, the federal government has forced Twitter's hand because the FDA has approved this drug. But why on earth would Twitter not take the more cautious position? Why would Twitter not say, well, look, some evidence shows that hydroxychloroquine is working to treat coronavirus, but we don't have long clinical trials yet, so okay, we'll just let the information stand out there. Your mileage may vary, judge for yourself. No, because they are pushing a narrative here. The narrative is panic. The narrative is the world is ending. The narrative is ultimately what they want. Their specific political goal is Donald Trump is doing a terrible job. He's bungling this. He's killing people. That's the ultimate narrative here. And so Twitter is always going to err on that side. ABC News, always going to err on that side. We don't know what this footage is. We just found this in the street. Someone just, okay, let's just assume it's evidence that Trump made a terrible move in the Middle East. Oh, it's a Kentucky gun show? Whoopsie daisy, no big deal. Oh, yeah, we got this footage of a hospital room. Yeah, that looks like New York. Yeah, Trump's a bad guy. Yeah, this is terrible. Yeah, we're all going to die. You could have Googled it, right? You could have looked around. You could have said, wait, why are they all speaking Italian? I know there are a lot of Italians in New York, but I didn't think there were that many Italians. We got another bit of fake news yesterday. So my doppelganger over on MSNBC ran a story about this hospital ship that the federal government was sending to New York to take care of people and deal with the overflow from coronavirus. President Trump just released the clip, but he added a little negative buzzer, a little wrong answer buzzer every time she told fake news. Compare that story on MSNBC with the reality of what actually happened.
In terms of the happy talk we've had on this front from the federal government, there is no sign that the Navy hospital ships that the president made such a big deal of, the Comfort and the Mercy, there's no sign that they'll be anywhere on site helping out anywhere in the country for weeks yet. The president said when he announced that those ships would be put into action against the COVID-19 epidemic, he said one of those ships would be operational in New York Harbor by next week. That's nonsense. It will not be there next week.
The Comfort has arrived in New York and is now making its way up the river. I'm on the west side, right around Houston Street, not far from where we work, and it's being led in a parade of tugs and Coast Guard vessels, helicopters circling above.
U.S. Navy hospital ship Mercy is now docked at the port of L.A. It will serve as an overflow facility for patients who don't have COVID-19. CBS 2's Kara Finstrom is live in San Pedro with a look at the arrival and what's to come. Kara.
Suzanne, this massive ship represents hope, support for overwhelmed medical workers. And I have to say, as it came in, it was great to see the smiles on faces here on the shore, the excitement. Take a look.
It just represents hope, and it just really represents that Rachel Maddow is completely wrong about this. My question for Maddow is, and not just Maddow, I mean to just single out my doppelganger. My question for all of these people in the fake news media, they end up looking so ridiculous. Why not just wait Trump says we're going to send this hospital ship. Why get out ahead of that and say, no, you won't. No, you won't do that. I mean, they do this all the time. Trump says, I'm going to get tax cuts. No, you won't. You're not going to get that through. Trump says, I'm going to be vindicated by the Mueller probe. No, it's Mueller time. You're going down. Try again and again. They keep making these predictions, and the predictions are not true, and then they have egg on their face. That's the question for a reasonable viewer. But I guess there is an answer to it, which is that their viewers are not checking up on this stuff. Not just Maddow, but the network news viewers and the New York Times readers and people who consume the mainstream media apparatus. They don't need to be as precise. They don't need to be as careful because they are the dominant media force. So sure, Will pointed out, if you listen to my show, you'll hear where they go wrong. But compared to the audience of all of network television, forget even cable, forget even all these subscriptions, just regular network television, that's the dominant audience. And so they can get away with it. The news is fake. All right, I never want to hear again that fake news is a right-wing conspiracy or a talking point. The news is fake. Even when they get stories right, they themselves are peddlers of fake narratives. So even a stopped clock is right twice a day. We've known that for a long time. What's worse now is that it would appear that even their models are fake too. Let me give you a great example. There was a good piece just published in Medium. I'm sure they're going to delete this soon because it questions the official narrative on everybody panicking. This is by Maria Cecchina and Wesley Pegden. I believe they're two mathematicians. So they were looking at just the models. They're not looking at the specific biology or the chemical characteristics of the virus. They're just looking at the models that all of us are talking about and the models that led us to shut down the global economy. And the title is A Call to Honesty in Pandemic Modeling. They use a number of examples, but here's just one. So Nicholas Kristof, a writer for the New York Times, decides to publish a model by a group of researchers. And the point of this model shows that if you social distance for 14 days, remember that was the initial 14, 15 days to stop the spread, then you're going to get this huge number of total infections. You're going to get 128 million total infections between January and October. And that's really high, and you got to flatten the curve, and this could overwhelm hospitals. So what you need to do instead is social distance for 2 months. That's what people are calling for now. Trump was initially saying we want to be open by Easter. Then all of a sudden it was we want to be open by April 30th. Now who knows what? Is it going to be May? Is it going to be June? We just don't know. The left is pushing for this to go longer and longer because every day it goes on, it reduces Trump's chances of being reelected. So Nicholas Kristof publishes this other model, which shows this much lower number of infections, 14 million total infections between January and October. It looks almost entirely flat, except the authors of this piece notice one strange thing. At the very end of the graph, the number ticks up. And you can't tell quite how much it ticks up. It sort of looks like it's ticking up exponentially. But you can't quite tell because the graph cuts off at October. What they don't show you, and what the authors of this piece, which I encourage you to read, A Call to Honesty in Pandemic Modeling, what they show you is if you extend the very same model out just another 2 months, then you get the exact same curve as you got the first time. All you've done is delay how long it will be before the people get infected, but the same number of people are going to get infected. It's not going to change at all. But that's the kind of dishonesty we're talking about, because if you were just looking at these graphs that the New York Times was talking about, then you'd say, oh, well, that's really big, and that number is really big, and that graph is really big. And this one is small, so let's go for the small one. But they don't tell you that when you flatten the curve or delay the curve or whatever, you're still going to get the same number of infections. Very dishonest stuff. It's why you have to take these things with some skepticism. Meanwhile, we're being told by left-wing politicians, we're being told by some more neurotic people on the right, we're being told that if you dare question what the experts are saying, that you're basically responsible for people being killed. You've got blood on your hands. You're not taking this seriously. No, we're taking it much more seriously than people on the other extremes. right? We're the ones we're not taking an extreme position here. We're saying, hold on, let's take a look maybe let's extend that graph out a little bit further. Are you're really saying we're going to avoid? I don't think so. Very dishonest models. Now, that's just what's going on in the news media. I'm sorry to say that other sectors of our society are taking advantage of this pandemic. My favorite one is in the realm of criminal justice. So the Democratic mayor, Sylvester Turner, Democratic mayor of Houston, is he's got a message for criminals. There have been a lot of proposals during this whole shutdown to let people out of prisons, to stop arresting people for crimes, to just reduce the jail population. The argument being that if you reduce the jail population, then it'll be easier or it'll be more difficult for coronavirus to spread within the jails. Not sure that's totally true. I mean, jails, you can't totally socially distance in jails, right? Not everybody is going to be 20 feet apart in their own private apartment. So regardless, they're suggesting we release all these prisoners. And so how are we going to deal with it when all these criminals are out on the street during the pandemic? Sylvester Turner has a solution. He just wants those criminals to chill.
Let me just make my plea. Until the coronavirus is resolved, criminals take a break. Okay? Stay home. Okay? Stay home. And don't commit any crimes. And that way, they'll stay safe and out of jail. And police officers will stay safe and can go home to their families. Okay? So everybody chill. Crooks, criminals, you chill. Wait till the coronavirus is over. Okay?
Man, why didn't I think of that? Oh, it's so obvious now in retrospect. The way that we can get criminals to stop committing crimes is we can just ask them to chill and like be really nice and just say like, hey, can you not commit crimes, criminals? That'd be great if you wouldn't. Thanks. Thank you. Chill. I don't know why we never thought of that one. I'm picking on this guy because he had this funny press conference. Mayors all over the country are doing the same thing. They're saying we got to reduce prisoners, we got to let them out. I mean, at least this guy has the kind of honesty to come out and say, yeah, that our only other plan is to say, hey, criminals, please don't commit crimes. New York did him one better. Okay, a town in New York did him one much better than that. That town is letting child molesters out of prison because somehow letting child molesters out of prison during a shutdown in a pandemic is going to help stop the spread of the virus or something. But generally, sexual assailants are not good at reducing the spread of disease. That's not their forte. But that's what this town decided to do. Part of a statewide effort in New York. 50 prisoners, including child sex offenders, were released in Monroe County due to coronavirus concerns, whatever that means. Even though it's completely unclear, by the way, if this jail had any confirmed cases of coronavirus. Here's the headline. 8 registered sex offenders have been released from Monroe County Jail as part of a statewide order coming from the Department of Corrections and Community Services. Among the inmates known to be staying at the Holiday Inn Express that the jail just dumped all these guys off at are 4 registered sex offenders, 3 of whom are registered as level 3 sex offenders and are deemed by New York courts as the most likely to reoffend. They are releasing not just criminals, not just burglars, not just arsonists, not just assailants, not even just rapists, but child rapists, and not only child rapists, the child rapists most likely to reoffend. Hard to understand. All 3 of the level 3 sex offenders staying at the Holiday Inn Express have been convicted for the rape of minors, every single one of them. Hard to understand what people are thinking here. They're not thinking about how to stop the spread of coronavirus. Obviously, releasing dangerous child rapists has nothing to do with stopping the spread of coronavirus. And this is really the most egregious example of a disturbing general trend in the whole coronavirus ordeal, which is the lawlessness of the pandemic. These people are behaving lawlessly. Politicians are using this pandemic as an excuse to do whatever they want, even if what they want will exacerbate the crisis. I mean, you saw this, especially in that coronavirus relief package from Washington, which is where, at the very last minute, Nancy Pelosi and Democratic lawmakers shoved in a bunch of Green New Deal proposals and tied coronavirus funding to reducing airline emissions. The Wuhan flu has nothing to do with airline emissions, yet they're using this to push their own agendas. They're using it to let people out of prison because the left doesn't like prisons, because the left doesn't like justice. So the left doesn't want to lock people up. You've seen a number of even blue check marks all over Twitter who are left-wing people saying we need to empty out the prisons. They're doing it all in the name of public health so that you don't question them. Because if you question the public health advocates and supporters and experts, well, then you're compromising public health. Now, if the New York and Houston criminal justice strategies are suspect, they are outdone only by the spiritual strategies of some preachers who are simply commanding the virus to go away. I bring you, ladies and gentlemen, the prosperity preacher, Kenneth Copeland.
In the name of Jesus.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Standing in the office of the prophet of God, I execute judgment on you, COVID-19.
Oh, Ramash.
I execute judgment on you, Satan, you destroyer, you killer. You get out. We break your power. You get off this nation. I demand judgment on you. I demand a vaccination to come immediately.
Yes.
We got it. Yes, we did it. Now, in Mr. Copeland's defense, I will say that if that performance is not enough to scare coronavirus away, I do not know what is. It was a fiery performance. And he's not the only one doing this. There are other preachers who are making this point. This kind of thing is particularly seductive during times of great trial and crisis, but ultimately it's just total spiritual poison. So we'll get to why that is in a moment. Then we'll get, of course, to President Trump's latest ratings-busting press briefing, and this one even featured Jim Acosta, so, you know. But first, if you haven't had a chance to see some of our new content called All Access Live, you should head on over to dailywire.com. Check it out. We will continue all of this week at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. It's been a lot of fun. I don't even consider it a show. You just kind of turn the camera on, we hang out. We know that we're all going crazy these days. Friends of mine have been suggesting we do Zoom happy hours or Zoom dinner or Skype this or FaceTime that rather. So I like to think that we were kind of the originators of this trend with our All Access show. The show is intended for our All Access members, but you know, in times of isolation, we want to open it up to all of our members. So head on over. If you're around at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific tonight, check it out at dailywire.com. Head on over there right now anyway, dailywire.com/subscribe. We've got a lot more.